Hi, good day everyone. I am Daisy Diaz together with my partner Saira Julata from BEd 302. So we're going to present to you the lesson 15, Qualities of a Good Reading and Text Comprehension Test. So let's have first the objectives. At the end of this lesson, you are expected to explain the interrelationship of test, measurement, and evaluation, differentiate the purposes and qualities of a good reading and text comprehension test, and identify measures to ensure the quality of a good reading and text comprehension test. In designing a reading and text comprehension test, the reading teacher needs to have a thorough understanding of the Teacher Act. There must be a congruency and consistency of the reading lesson objectives, the teaching learning activities, and the reading assessment test. So, as a reading teacher, in the first place, you must have the knowledge of what you are doing or what you are trying to achieve. How are you gonna teach the lesson leaving students ahead of learning, starting from planning the lesson to formulating objectives, which can be very beneficial since this will serve as a guide on what can you do for them to achieve something at the end of the lesson. There must be a congruency and consistency, meaning there must be a harmony between these three: the objectives, teaching, learning activities, and reading assessment tasks. So, when making activities and tests, this must always be in line with or must correspond with the objectives, and that you as a teacher can produce a sound reading and test comprehension test. In terms of assessment, the reading teacher must understand the qualities of a good assessment tool or test so that he or she could prepare a well thought out instrument. Just like when you wanted to measure your waistline, of course, you are going to use a proper measuring tool, which is a tape measure. So same goes with the assessment. You must see to it the assessment tool that you are going to use will exactly measure what you wanted to measure. So we'll find out more later on what qualities are those that you need to understand. To undertake an effective assessment of reading and text comprehension skills, the distinguishing features of test, measurement, evaluation, and assessment must be clearly understood. So, these terms are often used interchangeably. However, assessment, evaluation, measurement, and test all have different meanings and uses. Assessment contains all of these terms: the measurement, test, evaluation within its application. Since assessment include tests, the result or the measurement, evaluation of result or the evaluation. So this is according to Berry 2009. Test is an instrument containing items or tests intended to measure the achievement of learners as they learn reading. For example, when a teacher asks learners to answer a 10-item reading comprehension test after a reading test, so the extent of understanding the selection is tested. So next is measurement. Determine the number of items correctly answered by each learner or score as to how much the learner has understood the reading selection. Measurement is how we rate and determine the performance of a student numerically. It's very important here to assert that measurement is always numerical. In education, it refers to units, symbols, percentage, ranks, or row scores. For example, when you 3 out of 10 items test, it is a measurement. When you get 45 out of 50 item test, it is also a measurement. So this implies how far do you get out of the total score. So this number is equivalent to one's performance. Next, we have the evaluation process of interpreting the information collected useful in making decisions about learners' performance. So when the teacher makes a decision that a particular learner's score depicts an instructional level of performance, evaluation is done. Evaluation is when you start to interpret and judge the result of data you collected throughout the assessment process, or elsewhere, it's the phase for decision making. Instances requires the teacher to make a critical decisions about a learner's performance. Thus, there is a need to use written tests, actual performance observations, and other measures. This systematic process, the language teacher is engaged in assessment. Systematic meaning as a step-by-step process of gathering information. So as a teacher, before moving on to decision making, we must undergo the process of assessment, which is collecting and utilizing information about student learning. It's essential here to mark the difference between assessment and test. An assessment is not a test. However, a test is an assessment. Now let's proceed to the purpose of reading and text comprehension test. So we have here the purpose and the type of test. Like other language tests, testing reading and text comprehension skills have many purposes. Harris 1969, Hakuta, and BT 2000. The purpose of the test identifies its specific type among them. In terms of reading and comprehension, why do you think we need to conduct a test? In order for us to measure the extent of the learner's achievement of the instructional objectives. It indicates how successful they are in meeting the criterion of acceptable performance. So the type of test is summative test, which is usually given at the end of a chapter or a unit. For example, the teachers give a final project that requires the application of the required skills in relation to the curricular outcomes, and that way we were able to measure what a student know or what they can do. Next is to diagnose the learner's strengths and weaknesses. Learners have different characters when it comes to learning. They have their own set of difficulties. For us to know that, we can give them a form of pre-assessment to have an initial understanding on what interests them. Test results indicate where learners excel and where they still need assistance to master the desired competencies. Such a goal is the intent of a diagnostic test. To monitor learners' progress in learning, result of short tests given to the learners as they are engaged the process of learning a lesson provide feedback to the teacher which whether or not learners are developing the desired skill. So this type of test is a formative test. To measure aptitude for learning, result of a test foretell what learners can do in the succeeding test to learn. So a test with this intent is called aptitude test. So this test is designed to assess what a person is capable of doing or to protect what the person is able to learn or to give the right education and instruction. It represents a person's levels of competency to perform a certain type of test. So let's proceed to the reading and text comprehension test, which is the placement test. To classify or place learners in appropriate reading classes, test results determine who among the learners are at the frustration, instructional, and independent levels. As exemplified by the goals of the Philippine Informal Reading Inventory, the Philippine Informal Reading Inventory uses it as a classroom-based assessment tool to measure and to describe student reading performance. And this is given before a course or any program begins in order for them to determine the specific needs of the learners. The placement test result can identify learners who are ready or possess the prerequisite skill to succeed in learning to the new lesson.
Good day, everyone. I'm Syra David-Julata, the next discussant. So this will be the continuation of the discussion of Miss Daisy Diaz, and I will going to discuss about qualities of a good test. To ascertain that test results are of educational value to the reading teachers, they must possess certain qualities. Bachman, Fulmer, Fulcher, Davidson, they are the test experts that cite the principles of characteristics of a good test, namely validity, reliability, and the last one, practically. First is the validity, the ability of the test to measure what it intends to assess. Inferences made from the results are appropriate, meaningful, and useful. Validity and testing refers to how well a test measures what it claims to measure. A valid test accurately reflects the construct, the underlying theoretical concept. It's designed to assess inferences drawn from the results of a valid test are appropriate, meaningful, and useful for their intended purposes. Meaning, validity is the most crucial characteristic of any good test. If a test lacks validity, the results are meaningless no matter how reliable or consistent the test is. A valid test accurately assesses the intended skill or knowledge. The scores genuinely reflect the student's abilities in that specific area. Validity is not a single property but encompasses several aspects, each contributing to the overall validity of the test. For example, let's say we have a test designed to measure students' understanding of basic algebra. algebra. A valid test would include problems that directly assess concepts like solving equations, working with variables, and understanding algebraic expression. If the test accurately reflects the student understanding of this core algebraic principle, then it has high validity. Now, imagine a test for basic algebra that instead includes questions about history or literature. This test would have low validity because it doesn't measure algebraic understanding. The scores wouldn't accurately reflect the student's knowledge of algebra, even if they answered all questions correctly. To ensure validity, it must have content validity, congruent validity, and predictive validity. Content validity test items are based on the objectives and content of the lessons. It must possess face validity, or how the test looks to the reading teachers and experts. Meaning, content validity refers to how well the test item represents the entire domain of knowledge or skills being assessed. In a reading test, this means the question should cover all the relevant reading skills and concepts taught in the lesson or curriculum. It also involves having the test look right to the teachers and experts in the field. This is called face validity. A test with good content validity accurately reflects the material covered. Examples: high content validity, a reading comprehension test covering various aspects of reading such as vocabulary, identifying main ideas, inferencing and understanding authors' purpose, all based on the material taught in class. Experts in reading would agree that the test appropriately samples the relevant skill and knowledge. Next example is low content validity, a reading comprehension test focusing only on vocabulary, ignoring other crucial skills like inferencing or identifying the main idea, even though these were also taught, or a test with questions unrelated to the taught material. Experts would likely find such a test inadequate. Next is congruent validity, the ability to correlate significantly test scores of the learners to their scores in another test which was taken within the same period. Meaning, congruent validity examines how well a test result correlates with the results of another. Establish tests measuring the same construct administered at the same time. This helps determine if the new test is measuring the same thing already as the already validated test. Example: high congruent validity. A newly developed reading comprehension test shows a strong positive correlation with scores on a well-established standardized reading comprehension test given to the same student at the same time. This suggests the new test is measuring similar reading abilities. Next example is low congruent validity. A new reading comprehension test show a weak or no correlation with scores on a well-established reading comprehension test. This suggests the new test may be measuring something different or is unreliable. Lastly, we have predictive validity, when the test scores provide a strong correlation with the scores of the learners in future testing in the same reading subject. Meaning, predictive validity assesses how well a test predicts future performance on a related measure. In reading, this means how well scores on a current reading test predict future reading achievement. Students score on a reading readiness test administered in kindergarten strongly correlate with their reading achievement scores in second grade. This indicates the test is a good predictor of future reading success. Next example is low predictive validity. Students' score on a reading test in the third grade show little or no correlation with their reading performance in the fifth grade. This indicates the test is not good indicator of long-term reading progress. These three types of validity are crucial for ensuring the reading test accurately and meaningfully assess the student's reading abilities. A good reading test should possess all the three. Let's proceed to reliability. The ability of the test to provide a consistent or stable information. It is usually dependent on developing items that truly cover the essential competences and topics discussed in class. In testing, reliability refers to the consistency and stability of the test result. A reliable test produces similar scores when administered multiple times under similar conditions or when scored by different raters. It's about minimizing random error and ensuring that the scores accurately reflect the test taker's true ability or knowledge rather than chance factors. Meaning, reliability ensures that a test yields consistent result. If a student takes the same reading test twice under similar condition, they should receive roughly the same score both times. Similarly, if multiple teachers score the same AC-based reading test, they should arrive at similar score. Methods to establish reliability. First is test retest. If a reading test is retested to the same group of learners and the correlation yields a significant coefficient. For example, test retest reliability. A group of students take a reading comprehension test after a week, but not long enough for significant learning to occur. They take the same test again. A high degree of correlation between the two sets of scores indicates high test retest reliability. If scores vary widely between the two administration, the test reliability is low. Next is parallel form or equivalent form technique. If an equivalent form of a reading test that is form B is used to the same group of the two sets of scores are correlated. Parallel form reliability, two equivalent versions from or Form A and Form B of a reading test are created. Students are randomly assigned to take either Form A or Form B. High correlation between the scores on Form A and Form B indicates high parallel forms reliability. This demonstrates that the two forms effectively measure the same skills. Next is internal consistency technique. The Cuder-Richardson formula 20 is used to determine how well the test measured what it intends to measure. Internal consistency reliability. A reading comprehension test has several items measuring the same reading skill. Example, identifying the main idea. If a student performs consistently across all these items, either all correct or all incorrect, the test demonstrates high internal consistency. If their performance varies widely, indicating inconsistency in the measuring the same skill. The internal consistency is low. This is often measured using Cronbach alpha. Split half. When the test scores are divided into odd numbers, item scores and even numbered item scores, then the two sets of scores are tested for correlation index. And lastly, we have practically. The case of constructing the test as well as the ease of administering and scoring it, objective tests are easier to construct and to score than the essay test. A printed written reading and text comprehension test is easier to administer than an oral test. Practically in test development refers to the feasibility and efficiency of creating, administering, and scoring the test. A practical test is one that can be easily constructed, administered, and scored within the available resources, time, budget, materials, personnel, and without undue difficulty for both the test administrator and the test taker. Meaning, practically considers all aspects of a test practically from creation to scoring. It balances the quality of the assessment within the realistic constraints of time, resources, and ease of use. A test that's theoretically excellent but impractical to administer or score is not a good choice. For example, an objective multiple choice reading comprehension test is generally easier to construct than an essay test, requiring detailed scoring rubrics. Multiple choice question requires less time and effort to develop, and the answer key is readily available for accurate scoring. Essay tests, while potentially assessing deeper understanding, require intensive time for question development and through scoring rubric to ensure objective objectivity. That's all. Thank you.